So we're going to be talking about hedging international currencies. So essentially, if you're selling in Europe or if you're in Europe selling in the US, prices are always fluctuating between essentially the euro and US dollar. And what can happen is if there's a large fluctuation in the prices and you don't hedge, you could become you essentially can become unprofitable overnight. And then now it's like, wait, why are you even expanding, spending all this time to build out that market? And essentially, we're going to be talking about how you can go and lock in a forward rate to essentially do a full hedge or a half hedge to essentially lock in those profits. Because I know some of my friends personally, essentially they're like, it's not even profitable to sell in Europe because the euro, there's a large fluctuation in it and they didn't hedge for it. And then now they're paying VAT, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, why did I even spend all this time expanding Europe if I'm not even making money? So we're going to be going over that in this video. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, hope you enjoy it. All right, guys, today we're going to talk about hedging currency. So we're moving into more volatile times right now, especially with currencies and fiat money. It's really changing, especially with threat of a potential recession or not, and all the central banks printing. So with that, we're here today to talk with Gabriel from OFX again, and we're going to see what could we do to kind of hedge. And something can be profitable and all of a sudden the euro drops 20% and you're not profitable. So yeah, we're going to talk about how you can hedge that risk with OFX today.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brock. Yeah, so real quick, when you're talking about moving money internationally and selling internationally, especially if you're a dollar-based company, you want your profits in dollars. And if you're making euros and you're making pounds, the value of those currencies is going to fluctuate against the dollar. Sometimes they're going to go up, which is good for you, but sometimes they're also going to go down, which is bad. And if they go down enough, you are going to be in a place where you're no longer profitable in those markets. And if you're not profitable, you're probably not going to stick around very long. And to do that only because of currency it's just not good business practices. If you've got a thing that you're selling, whether it's a basketball or it's a clock or it's a cell phone case, and you have a market that you can sell in profitably today, you can then lock in those values of those currencies, because you're not going to review the price every single day that you're selling at versus what is the exchange rate and what is your profit margin, how much are you spending on marketing. So you want to take some risk out of that equation, especially when selling internationally. So I'm going to share my screen here just to give you guys an idea of what's been going on just over the last 6 months. So here it is. What I've done is this is over the last year. Let's say you're making 10,000 pounds a month in England, right? And you're bringing that back into dollars. Okay. So 10,000 pounds today gets you almost 13 grand. Not bad. But if you look, back in May, that same 10,000 pounds made you over 14. So that's $1,000 difference in profit, essentially in revenue, which goes straight to the bottom line in profit, because we're just talking about a currency valuation. You're trading one currency for another. So you're losing, if you hadn't let's say you did nothing and you're just playing the market, you're just following this path down and losing revenue the entire time you're selling in the UK if you're selling at the same price, right? And if your costs are in dollars, this means that your profit margins are getting narrower, right? Now you can do the same thing for euros. Okay? Euros are doing the same thing. This is over the last year. You can see it went from like 1.25, now it's down to 1.15. This is pretty common. This isn't an unusual situation here. I mean, it will go back up eventually, but currencies will adjust or fluctuate about 10% up or down any given year. In a 12-month period of time, you're going to see a 10% fluctuation up or down, right? Maybe it goes 5% up and 5% down. Maybe it goes just up, or maybe it goes just down. But it's the fluctuation that you should be worried about, because you don't want to lose money, right? And so what you can do, and what I'll get into later, is what is called setting a forward rate. You're going to lock in your profit margins today. So if I'm going to set, if my costs are $3 per unit and I'm going to sell at 10 euros, I'm going to get my exchange rate, know what my profit margin is, and then I'm going to lock that in, right? And I can lock it in for a given amount of sales. If I project I'm going to have $500,000 worth of sales, 500,000 pounds worth of sales, maybe I want to take half of that and hedge it. Maybe I want to take all of it because I really like the price and I don't want to worry about it. So we'll get into all of this, but it just as a primer, you can see currencies, they fluctuate against each other. And if you're a dollar-based business with international income, you're going to want to look at the value of those currencies to make sure that you remain profitable. And just as a final note here, I get some of the pushback I get on this is, oh, I'm not a trader. I don't know finance that well. I don't want to bet on currency. If you don't do anything, if you don't set a forward rate, if you're not looking at it, you're betting on currency. You're just making a bet that it's either going to stay or go in your favor, which is never going to happen all the time. Okay? Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And so rather than having that risk element as part of your business model, where you're saying, I'm going to speculate on currency, and if it goes up, great, I make more. And if it goes down, that's too bad, I make less. Take that out. You are in the business of selling whatever it is you're selling. Whether, like I said, cell phone cases, basketballs, and electronics, and health and wellness, baby products, whatever it is you sell, make money selling that. Don't try and make money in the currency markets. Focus on your business.
So essentially, people, by not hedging,
yeah,
you're just betting that it's going to go in your favor. So you're default gambling.
Yes, by default you are gambling, and so it's kind of a misperception. They go, oh no, I don't want to set a forward rate because I don't want to. But that is locking in profit, is what a forward rate does. Yes, you will miss out on a little bit of upside, possibly, if the value of the euro goes up against the dollar, and you're all of a sudden going to get more dollars per euro. But again, you're profitable. Stay profitable. Don't let it go against you, where you now are with advertising and all your other expenses. You go from 10% margins to 0, and now you're just running on a treadmill trying to stay in the game. So now we're going to get into kind of a bit more detail on how these things work. This is just bottom line here. The bottom line, this yellow line, is your cost to get inventory per unit, right? And this is if you're just a domestic buyer or seller. So if you were buying in dollars and selling in dollars, you have no currency exposure. You don't need to worry about anything, because the value of that currency is the same for revenue and for costs. Okay, so you don't care about it. It doesn't matter. You buy for 2, you sell for 10. Your interim costs are X, and you're making a profit. Okay, but when you're importing, say you're sourcing out of Europe or Canada or the UK, now you're buying, assuming you're not buying in dollars, but you're buying in pounds. And even if you are buying in dollars, but it's from a British supplier or a European supplier, there is an FX equation. By FX, I mean foreign exchange. Somebody is taking the hit on foreign exchange. So if you're dollar-based and you are buying in dollars from Europe, you might want to ask your supplier, hey, can I get a better price if I send you euros? More than likely that it will be the case, is you can get a better price, because they're essentially taking that conversion cost, which we covered last time, along with risks up and down about when they're going to get the dollars, and if it's a 30-day or 60-day payable. Now they've got to hedge it if they do. More than likely, if they've been in the game a while, they will hedge that. They'll take out a contract. So your sales are constant in dollars, but your costs, assuming you're buying in euros or pounds, those are going to fluctuate with the value of the currency, right? And then if you're exporting, it's the opposite, right? And this is what you've got a lot of Chinese sellers are doing. Their costs in RMB remain the same, but their sales essentially to you, as you're getting supplies from China, their sales revenue is going to fluctuate with the dollar against the RMB. And I talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that actually the value of the RMB has gone down quite a bit against the dollar. It's now almost 7-1. If you have a price that you were getting from your supplier 6 months ago in dollars,
it should be cheaper now, right?
It should be a lot cheaper.
You just got to ask for it, though.
You got to ask for it.
Give that.
Ask for it. Say, hey, my dollars are more valuable today than they were 6 months ago. This was my price 6 months ago in RMB. Here's that price today in RMB, and then here's the dollar equivalent. That's what I want to pay you.
Oh, so maybe even a good kind of methodology might be to, when you're making those contracts and talking with your suppliers, to actually get the quote in RMB and dollars, not just one. And then you use that against them in the future and say, well, so you're going to charge me. Yeah. Oh, nice. I never thought about that.
Because it's just, their costs are not in dollars. They like to receive dollars because as you can see over the last 6 months, it's actually been pretty good for them. If they've held dollars, they've got more money in RMB. Okay. And then finally, you've got, what a lot of larger sellers are into is they're sourcing from a lot of different places. They've got a lot of different currencies that they're dealing with, both on the cost side and the revenue side. So you can see it gets, you can get pretty wide and you can get pretty narrow. It just like right here is narrow, right here is pretty wide. And this was just and these are just made up graphs, but you can see that the value of the currencies as they fluctuate, they're going to really affect your profitability. Okay. And then so this is what I said earlier. They tend to fluctuate about 10% in any given year. Since August 2015, the pound has taken a beating, and that's primarily because of Brexit. But these affect your profitability, right? So you've got essentially two choices. As a seller, you're US based, you're selling in the UK. If you're setting that pound price, whatever it is, say 10 pounds, okay, but then the value of those pounds goes down against the dollar, you can adjust your price upwards. You can go from 10 to 11. So you keep your profit margin the same. Now, what that does in your competitive landscape, maybe everybody does it, maybe nobody else does it, and you lose out on sales, but you want to keep your margin. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is you just keep the price the same. You're going to sell for 10 all day long, but then that fluctuation hits your pocket, right? If it goes in your favor, that's great. You've got more dollars. If it goes against you, now you've got fewer dollars and you're less profitable. And those are the only two options you've got. And then on the right-hand side, you can see just this is what currencies have done. This is if they had stayed totally flat over the last few years, it would be right here. This is just percentage change. And so you can see how it goes. And, pound down 20%. CAD had a 15% change since August 2015, right, to today. Right? And this is just taking the max and the minimum. So if you look at this, most sellers, if you're selling at, a 40% profit margin on Amazon, that's what you need. You need a 40% margin before advertising, before all your other costs. Euro to US dollar, that's a 16% switch. So you don't really have time. And also everybody's limited in time. This is one thing where if you can take it off the table, I think you should, at least part of it. And we'll get into how you do that.
So basically, if it looks like, hey, I'm happy with this margin and,
exactly.
like lock it in. Because, there's some people, if you're running on like a 15% margin net,
right,
and you get a 10% currency fluctuation, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's not worth getting out of bed in the morning for 5%.
Yeah.
So here's what we talk about now is the forward contract. And what a forward contract is it's just an agreement to lock in a price for a certain amount of money at a rate. And we do this at OFX. So you call us up and you say, hey, I've got 100,000 euros that I'm expecting in 2 months' time. I like today's value. I don't want to get paid 100,000 euros in 2 months, not knowing what that dollar equivalent is going to be. I like today's rate. I want that forward rate, and we can do that for you. You can also do that just about any major currency. You can do it any currency pair, and the contracts are good for about 12 months. So it's not like you have to fill it all in one day. You don't have to have 100% clarity on exactly how much you're going to need. You can estimate it and say, look, I want to hedge half, and I'll get into that in a second. But here's what it looks like. So here is the pound to dollar over the last few years. And if you were back in April 2014, if you had the foresight to say, hey, I've got a lot of revenue that's coming in pounds. I like the value of the pound right now. I want to lock that in, right? So here it is getting stronger. There it is getting weaker. Right around 2014, you go, hey, this is it. Now, if you did it right here, you lost a little bit of potential money, potential revenue right here. But then all of this, you locked in this value. So you're getting, a little bit more than 1.65, $1.65 for every pound you sell. Now we're down here, right? You're getting $1.30. So that's a really big difference. Obviously you can't do it for this long, and this was a really good idea. If you'd set the forward rate here, right? If you're going to do it today, you don't know where the pound is going to go, but you don't have to set it for a year. You can set it for a month. You can set it for 6. You can just do things to where you're just taking a little bit of risk off the table for a given period of time so you can focus on growing your business. And you don't want to have to wake up every morning freaking out about what the value of the pound is and what's happening with Brexit and all these. And there are a lot of global things that happen that affect the value of the currency that really no individual knows what's going to happen, really, nor can we affect it. It's all macro stuff, right? So that's the forward. And then we're going to go through a quick example just to show you the numbers. So if you're anticipating revenues of 20,000 pounds to 20,000 euros, right, over the next year, going back in time, say it's January 1, 2018, right? what do we have? What do we have to work with? What data? Okay. Well, we know all of 2017. So we can see what the currencies did. We can see where they are now. And then we can, make a bet. Okay. You either bet that it's going to keep going in your way and you don't want to take out a forward contract at all. You say, I like it where it is. I'm going to bet that I'm just going to make this amount of money per euro revenue, per pound revenue for the next 6 months, 12 months. I'm going to estimate how much I'm going to make, and then I'm going to just lock in today's value, right? You can do that. Or you can hedge part. You can do all of it, none, or some, right? So here it is, 3 scenarios. Zero hedging means just like, to be honest, this is what probably 95% of my clients do, is they don't hedge. And I talk to them all day long about it. It's like, you've got a ton of money coming in. You don't want to be at risk to currency fluctuations. There's a forward contract for half of expected 2018 revenues, and then a forward contract for all of it, right? And so we've got our estimates, we've got our forecasts, we know how much we think we're going to grow, how much we think we're going to sell. You can do half or all, or not. Okay.
So why do people not hedge? Do you think they think
it's too hard? I don't know. It's usually I guess the best way to put it is they just don't spend the time really thinking about it. They're so focused on product and marketing and driving top line revenue and then growing internationally. They like to grow that top line, that they don't really focus on the value very much. And especially if it's a US seller, like if you're a 5-person hustle shop in the US and you've got your private label brand and you're sourcing out of China and you've grown well in the US, you haven't had to deal with currency ever. Your dollar cost, your dollar revenue. And so then you just want to focus on that and keep those wheels turning. And so when you expand to Canada, when you expand to the UK, you expand to Australia and Europe, you're still just doing what you're doing. You're staying in your comfort zone and you're not getting outside and saying, oh, there's this currency thing that I also need to pay attention to. That's usually what it is. And then there's, like I said earlier, there's that opinion that, I'm not a currency expert. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. So I'm not going to do anything about it. It's like, well, that's a viewpoint. You can take that one. But at the end of the day, a forward rate really doesn't cost you anything. And it just takes a whole lot of risk off of the table. And then, you're going to be selling for years, right? 5, 10 years. If you want to exit and take your 4X on revenue, down the road and get bought out, you can do that. But if you want to be in business long term, you want to de-risk that portfolio somehow. This is just one element of it. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of reasons why not to do it. And at the end of the day, it's really just down to, I think, a lack of understanding about what a forward contract is and how it works. And then for some sellers, it's just the fact that there are differences, like the fluctuation happens on a daily basis. And so it's tough.
So there's some bigger sellers, though, that like if they wouldn't do this, they could potentially just be completely unprofitable. Like some of the bigger clients that are doing, hundreds of millions, if they're running
absolutely
10%.
Well, the guys that are just, so as a reference point, like my more experienced sellers, the guys that have been around a while, if you, especially kind of the larger shops where they've hired a CFO or brought in a controller from a much larger brand or a much larger company, they're going to come in with that skill set and knowledge base of having operated in 10 different currencies, right? And so they're going to be the ones that will be like, yeah, I'm blocking your forwards. The guys that, booksellers are a big one. They source out of the UK a lot. They sell in the US, but then they sell globally. And they're setting forward rates almost on a weekly basis. They're not, because their contracts are such that they're, I'm selling 100,000, so I have to buy X amount. And those payables are in 30, 60 days. I'm going to lock in both of these. I'm going to take my 5% profit margin and I'm going to go to the next deal. And so those guys do it all the time. So, this doesn't have to, you don't have to take it as, I'm estimating all 12 months. That's what this scenario is. But you can do it on a weekly basis, especially if you've got, a 100,000 euro expense that is coming down the line at you in 3 months' time. And you need to budget for that today. Right? If the euro goes up, and all of a sudden it's going to be more expensive for you in 3 months. It could be cheaper, but if you know what it is today, you can plan. Then you can plan for it. Right?
So even taking not a full year, just that shorter term, so that it's like, hey, instead of needing 100, like hopefully you might need 110 or something, and so it's like, well, I can plan for that.
And especially for Amazon, Amazon pays you every 2 weeks, but how long does it take between setting a price. You put your listing up on, say, Amazon UK, right? And you look at the exchange rate and you set your price. How long does it take for then, say, I estimate 10,000 in sales, right? It's going to take at least 2 to 3 weeks for you to start seeing money on that, right? And you're not looking at your price. You're not adjusting it every day. You sell something on Monday, Amazon doesn't convert it for you for 2 weeks, right? So now you've got revenue coming in, and that's the value of that money sitting over there is constantly changing. Now, that's fine if you've got pound payables, right? If you have pound revenue and pound payables, that's what's called a natural hedge, right? Because I've got to pay out pounds and I'm receiving pounds. I don't need to set any sort of a contract. But if you don't have, or if they're not exactly equivalent, if you've got 100,000 in pound revenues, 20% is for VAT, right? 80% is coming back home. For planning purposes, you really need to lock it in. Well, you don't need to. I think you probably should, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would say most people set it and forget it. And then they say, well, are we selling or not?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even know if
we're
they're
selling,
making money.
but I've had a number of my conversations with some brands are like, oh yeah, we're pulling out of Europe, we're pulling out of the UK, we can't make any money there. It's like, well, yeah, you can't now because the value of that currency has gone down so much, and your dollar cost base means that you've got to sell for that amount, and you've got other people that are competing for it. But if you had locked in your margin 6 months ago, you probably could still operate profitably in that country, in that region. And to get out of it, like I said earlier, to get out of a market because of a currency fluctuation, you think of all the time and energy and money you spend getting into a market, finding your customer, developing that relationship, serving them up with a nice product that they like, that they want to come back and buy again. And then in 6 months' time, you're like, oh, can't make any money, got to pull out just because of currency. So then a year later, when the currency value comes back, you go, oh yeah, we can go make money there again. Now you're square one, right? Starting all over.
You lost all your ranking, you lost everything. So
yeah, you're not going to be on the first page for a while. All that time, effort, and money you spent, you just got to do it all again. And there are other reasons you could leave a market that you're not profitable in. I'm not saying by any means you're always going to be profitable in the market, but if you're leaving because the currency value is too low, it's probably not the best reason to leave. And you don't want to have to do that. And you don't have to do that. Actually.
So how complex
if you
is
plan
this?
So this isn't that complex. So this is what we've got. So here we're just making a decision. Look, we see where we started in January. We see that it went up. Now this is our value today. $1.37 pound to dollar. That means for every pound of revenue, I'm going to make $1.37. And for every euro revenue I've got, every €1 I make, I'm going to make $1.22. Okay. That's just the conversion. So now we've got our options, right? We can take this rate for the rest of the year. We can take it for part of the year. We can see what's going to happen. Now, just choose one. I know this. I've presented this before. But choose one thing that you want to do. If you want to set it all forward, you want to take everything off the table and just lock it all in. If you want to do half, you want to do none. Because there is, at the end of the day, it's real money. We can see here's the low, here's the high. So we're kind of almost at the high point here for the pound and the euro. All right. Now you got to know, are you profitable? You're not going to lock these rates in if you're not profitable. Right. Now here's what's happened in 2018. This is just for the first few months, right? It was like until July or August. So I haven't updated this to November. But here we've got average, high, and lows, right? Change 8.5 and 7.3, right? So this is what that looks like. So it went up and then it started to come back down, right? So high of 142, 125, low of 131, 116. So right around July, August, we were at new lows, right? And so if you didn't do anything, you probably should review it. Every 6 months you look at it, you look at the market. How much are you selling? What are you selling? Are you profitable making $1.31 instead of $1.37? Probably. It's not that big of a drop. But if you're on 5% margins, you might not be, right? If you've just kind of done the ostrich thing and stuck your head in the sand with regards to currencies and you're not looking at them, you might not be profitable anymore in these markets just because of the currency. And the problem there is the more you sell, the more you lose, right? So are you profitable, right? So currency values absolutely make a difference. Here are the exchange rates. You can see it. This is the same graph. This is January to August. It's just expanded out a little bit, okay? And so now here we are, zero protection. So what we did was, what I did is I basically said, you're going to make 10,000 every 2 weeks for this amount of time in each market. So 20,000 a month. How much would you make in dollars at those different exchange rates? So I took the exchange rate of that day that you're going to get paid out by Amazon. So call it a Friday. Every other Friday, take that exchange rate. So it's not this rolling thing. It's like every Friday or every other Friday, Amazon paid you. Okay, here's what we could have done. We decided not to do that. And we made $385,000 in change. Okay, not bad. Hopefully. Don't know what our costs are. Half protected. Okay, this means that we essentially went out 12 months and we said, I expect to make 500,000 euros, right? I want to hedge half of that. Give me a contract, 250,000 euros at today's exchange rate. Today's exchange rate is $1.22. So that's my floor. I'm going to make $1.22 for every euro of revenue I've got. Okay. Now you have to fill this thing. You can't just like back out of the contract. It is a contract. So if this thing, the euro were to only go this way, right, and it goes up to $1.30, you have a contract saying you're going to get $1.22, which kind of hurts, but at the end of the day, you're still profitable, right? You're making money. You're profitable day in and day out, which is the important thing here. Okay. So if you did half, right, you would have the option. So you can use the forward contract when it's below, right, down to the right, June, July. You're using your forward contract. You're getting $1.22 instead of $1.16. That's great. You're getting 8 more cents per revenue, or 6 more cents per unit of revenue. That's great. And then you use the spot rate when it's above. Now, again, you have the option here, but you do have to use up your entire contract. And I can get into that if you want to call me or email me and figure that out later. But this gives you the option a little bit. It gives you some variability. So then you made, if you did this over this period of time, you made more than 10 grand more just by this one currency strategy. Right now, it's not always going to be the case, but here it is. You were protected, you took out some risk, and you made more money, which is kind of nice. And then if you did everything, let's say I don't want to do this. I want to just focus on my business. I don't want to wake up every morning and have to look at rates and decide if I want the forward or the spot and how much of my contract have I used up. I want to take everything and just go. Full protection means we don't even care about the markets. We don't care about highs and lows. We want $1.37, $1.22 all day long. We made 388 grand, almost 389. So we made more than if we had nothing in place, and we made less than if we had a little bit in place, or half of it. But as you can see, I mean, these are strategies here that my focus is always to say, look, take risk out of your revenue portfolio, whatever that looks like. Take risk out so you can be in business for a long time. Having zero protection, I mean, sometimes it's great. Sometimes those international markets are only going to go one way, and you're just going to make more money day in and day out for the same amount of euro or pound revenue. That's fantastic, but that's never going to stay the same all the time. They do go up and down. There is a wave, and you want to be protected. Okay, so key takeaways. And this is, let me get my thing out of the way because this is important. Okay. So here's your forward rate. They take risk out of the profit equation. They can cost you some money if it goes in your direction, but you know you're making money. You know you've got a profit margin there. Now there's exposure, right? If you have, well, I talked a little bit about earlier, if you have pound revenue and pound payables and they're exactly matching, you don't have any pound exposure. But if you don't, if that's not the case, then you've got exposure to that market. Like finance professors would always say, you were exposed. Your appetite for risk and your view on currency. So if you are just gangbusters and you're saying, hey, I'm going to bet the farm, I think that currency is going to stay there all day long. I love it. I like this risk. Don't set a forward rate, but you've got to have a view then on currency that you think that it's low today and it's only going to go in one direction. Protecting all of it is great when the currency only gets weaker. So for instance, as the dollar got weaker against the euro and the pound in 2016, like month after month, you're actually making more dollars per unit of international revenue because the value of the dollar is going down. Okay, so that would be great. So there you made more profit. Okay, so I flipped that. Pound gets weaker, you set your forward rate, you keep your profits instead of losing money. Getting market rates works great when a currency only gets stronger, like in 2017. We saw that. The pound goes up, right? If we set the forward rate, we're making money, but not as much money. So you have missed additional profit. Fact. And protecting part of your exposure works when a currency both strengthens and weakens over the years. And that's what's happened so far. So what we've done is we've gone up and down, spot and forward, right? Which you can do. So I say pick a strategy, focus on growing sales, staying profitable in your overseas markets. What you need to do. Now, this is the stuff that everybody should do if you're selling internationally, right? Here's what the currency rate is going to do. It's going to stay the same. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. Convert your price you're selling in back to your base currency and decide on your floor. Okay, your floor is what is the minimum amount you need to make per unit, right? And what is that exchange rate? There's your floor. Okay, whatever that exchange rate is. I mean, if it's 1-to-1, right? Now it's 1.3. If it gets down to 1-to-1, that's your floor. Now you're no longer profitable, or that's somewhere where it's just too much loss per unit, whatever that is. At a minimum, you set an alert for this, just so you get notified if your floor gets hit. And that way you can take a little bit out of there. Ask yourself, are you willing to give up higher profits for downside protection? And then understand your ability to sell for loss should a currency's value go too low. If you're losing money, how long can you stay there? I mean, if you've got a huge war chest and you're like, I'm just going to outlast all my competition, they aren't sending forward rates, I know it. And so they're going to have to leave and I'm going to stay there. And it's a war of attrition for a while. Okay, you can do that. And then as we talked about earlier, you need flexibility. So getting bank accounts in local currencies, so you have the option to hold balances. Amazon, they're going to convert your money every 2 weeks, like clockwork, send it back to you. I mean, if Thursday, if the rate dives 5%, Friday they convert it and they send you your money. Much better to say, look, I've got a pound account over here, I've got a euro account, pay me there. And if it takes a dive on Thursday, hold that balance. Don't realize that loss. It's just like if the stock market, goes down 5,000 points, right? And all of a sudden your portfolio is 10% lower. You're not all of a sudden just going to liquidate everything and realize the loss. You would hold those stocks and wait for them to hopefully come back up. You can do the same thing with currency if you don't have to convert it. If you don't need the revenue, if you don't have to use it or convert it, you don't realize that loss. You only have that option, though, if you have a bank account in those currencies. If you're telling Amazon to pay you dollars, then you don't have the option. Amazon's just going to do it.
Well, and Amazon's going to charge you a bunch, too, in FX fees.
Yeah. They do.
No. Yeah, so you already take a 3% loss automatically.
Yeah.
So
3% loss on their FX margins and then currency. So all in all, it's just, having this functionality, and there's the global currency account. And I'll run through this real quick. So it's just, let me just get to the dashboard. So here it is. So you can hold balances, you get currency accounts in euros, pounds, CAD, Aussie dollars, US dollars if you need them, Hong Kong dollars. Land all your revenues in these accounts from Amazon, from eBay. If you're an international seller, we do this for the US also. Land your dollars in the US here. Then you can make payouts to suppliers. You can pay taxes. You can do all these things with that balance. The only thing you can't do, you can't withdraw cash and it doesn't earn interest. But it's one place, one login, a bunch of currencies to hold, the ability to set forward rates, the ability to set limit orders. And this is the one thing I was talking to you about earlier via email, is the limit order functionality also is if I have to make a payment in pounds over the next, say, 30 days, and I'm looking at it and I think it's going to wiggle like that. And I say, look, when it hits 1.25 to 1, when it's only going to cost me $125,000, today it's going to cost me $127,000. I want it to cost $125,000. Set a limit order. As soon as it hits that rate, if it does, even if it's in the middle of the night, boom, the currency gets converted, the deal gets done, and it's cost $125,000 instead of $100,000. So you don't have to watch the markets all day long and try and time it. At the end of the day, if it never hits that rate and you get it 30 days out, you haven't saved that $2,000 and maybe it's gone up to 131, but you have that ability as well, is to set limit orders and just say, look, I think it's going to hit this rate. You can do that over a 24-hour period. Save yourself, $100, $200. just by saying, over the day's change, it's going to go up and down a little bit. And that happens every day. So there it is. That's the thing. So OFX, a little bit about what we do. We just move money. We do it really well. We've got offices all over the world. We can set up bank accounts in all the major currencies that I mentioned. And we move it really efficiently. So we hold money everywhere, not everywhere, most places. So if you want to do a deal from euros to dollars, what happens is if you have an account with us is we will buy your euros and we will send dollars to you at a better exchange rate than you're going to get from the bank, much better than it moves really fast. Usually stuff is delivered, and I think 70 to 80% of our cross-border payments are done within 24 hours. And rates are really good. The service is great, 24/7 support, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a cost savings function. It's treasury management. And for sellers that are grown, they've gone from the 2-person hustle shop to the 20-person brand that is just killing it internationally. This is a great tool to just kind of manage those profits and manage those revenues. So, you're not Nike, assuming, you don't have boots on the ground everywhere. You don't have bank accounts everywhere. You don't even have the time or the energy to fly all over the place and open up bank accounts. We can do this for you so that you've got a really good setup for receiving revenues and paying them out. Things aren't done via wire most of the time, which means you don't have wire fees, incoming or outgoing, at least for your account. And so it's a good service. It's a solid one for all online sellers, really, all brands that are out there that are just selling using the marketplace model of leveraging Amazon's international places, or it doesn't have to be Amazon. It can be your own website. It can be eBay. It can be a different one. It can be Rakuten, although we're getting JPY. We don't have that yet. All those things, it's just a good tool. So, and then I'm happy to talk with anybody about setting forwards. If they want to send me an email, you can put that up somewhere. It's a good tool that doesn't really have any cost to it. We make our money on the margin. So we do charge. There's interbank rate, and then there's retail. Banks, it's out here. Amazon, it's like up here, depending on currency pair. We're down here. We're just narrower. We got a really efficient system, and we move $20 billion a year. So we're pretty good at it.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah. So, you guys, basically, you're going to be getting charged. Basically, you're going to be getting charged like 3.5%, something like upwards percentage if you're going through Amazon. And wiring money to your suppliers is always not fun, particularly, especially with my bank, who only lets me wire $10,000 at a time. Otherwise, I have to go in person. And if you wire more than $100,000, well, then you go through all this KYC stuff, and then they call you, and there's like 8 phone calls, and so just much.
Yeah. So with us, if you've got an account with us, we can ACH debit your US dollar account. So if you need to make that large payment, we've got a full disclosure, our KYC process getting in the door with us, it's just like opening up a bank account. We need a lot of documentation. But once you're in, you can call us up. We can ACH debit. You can send money to us. But yeah, our limits are really high. I think on US dollars, I think it's about 9. I want to say, it's more than 500 grand. I don't know exactly what the limit is, but it's a lot. And so you can send a lot of money. You can receive a lot of money. And it's a lot easier than having to deal with a bank.
Any time of the day.
Any time of the day. Yeah, if you wake up at midnight going, I forgot to send that payment, and it's due in 48 hours. If you're in the US, the guy on the other end of the line probably is going to have an Australian accent, but he's going to be able to do something.
Yeah, that was nice. I had a little bit of issue my first time, but then I was like at the bank and called you guys, and it was like, I had an answer in like 1 minute. Yeah, well, if you guys have any other questions, definitely let us know. We'll get Gabriel on again if there's enough of them, or email him, and
do that. Put it on a feed. I'm available. Throw my email up somewhere, and then happy to talk with people. It's for planning for 2019 is probably what people are going to start doing now that Cyber Monday today, but as you get into kind of middle, end of December, you're going to start looking at 2019 and making plans. And so if you have plans to sell internationally, or you are already, you probably want to, take a look at the value of the currency and just be like, look, I want to de-risk this a little bit. And especially if you're doing any kind of volume, if you're doing upwards of 100 grand, yeah, make sure you're profitable.
Yeah, definitely, because the dollar, yeah, there's potentially volatile currency movements.
Oh yeah, there's a lot
know.
of stuff coming down. And to be honest, there almost always is. Brexit is a bit of an outlier, but as we're seeing with these trade wars, things in Europe aren't going swimmingly. I mean, their economic numbers are coming out, so currencies take the hit on all of these announcements, and there are probably, I don't know, in any given month, there are probably 10 major announcements that can move markets that will affect your revenue and affect your profitability. So keeping track of it all is hard. It's much easier to kind of just focus on your business. And like I said, make sure you're profitable. If you're not reevaluating the sales price every week or so, or every month that you're selling it internationally, you probably want to, then your margins, I don't know how you account for your margins. Because then you've got to go back and take every conversion that you've done with it, whether it's Amazon or a different marketplace, and try and figure out how much did I sell? What did that cost me? And what was my conversion back into dollars after I sold all that revenue?
Oh man, I never thought about the accounting aspects of it.
Right.
Oh, so that's the other hidden benefit of this is you get your rate, so it makes your accounting a bit easier.
Yeah. And so with us, I mean, we also send you emails, and you've seen it, right? So you get exactly what rate you received for that conversion. So you can account for it there. And you can, I mean, in our thing, you can also, there's an Excel file you can download for all transactions to, put that into whatever accounting software that you've got. But yeah, it's hard to do, and it's hard to forecast. And so, yeah, if you're going to make $1.30 for every euro revenue. So then you go, okay, over the last 6 months, I made 250,000 euros, and I know exactly how much that is in dollars.
Awesome. Sweet. Well,
yeah.
Thanks. So it's pretty simple, right? You just kind of ask and probably get a rate and sign the contract, and
exactly
relatively easy.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Well, yeah, definitely reach out to Gabriel if you have any questions, and do something, or if you do nothing, you're still doing something.
Yeah, you are. You're just you're rolling those dice. Yeah.